When power meets fear, legends are born, and in the brutal, unforgiving world of boxing, no name ever embodied that collision more completely than Mike Tyson. From the cracked sidewalks of Brownsville, Brooklyn, one of America's most violent neighborhoods, to the blinding lights of global superstardom, Tyson's rise was not just a sporting journey but a psychological phenomenon that changed boxing forever. As a child, Mike Tyson was small, bullied, and constantly surrounded by chaos, crime, and survival, growing up in an environment where fear was currency and violence was language, and it was in this atmosphere that a raw, uncontrollable rage began to form, a rage that would later become his greatest weapon. When Tyson found boxing, or rather when boxing found him through the legendary trainer C.U. D'Amato, something extraordinary happened. Fear was no longer something that controlled him, it became something he weaponized. C.U. D'Amato saw what others saw as a problem and recognized it as potential, molding Tyson not just physically but mentally, drilling into his mind the philosophy that fear was natural but could be mastered, redirected, and transformed into explosive power, and under this philosophy Tyson was reborn. Training relentlessly, Tyson developed a style that defied traditional heavyweight norms, shorter than most of his opponents yet faster, more explosive, and infinitely more aggressive, slipping punches with head movement learned from the PK style, closing distance like a predator, and unleashing combinations with terrifying speed and precision. By the time Tyson turned professional in 1985, he was not just winning fights, he was erasing opponents, demolishing seasoned professionals with ease, often within the first round, sending a chilling message through the heavyweight division that something unprecedented had arrived. Each knockout added to the myth, each walk to the ring amplified the fear, and by the time Tyson stared across the canvas at his opponents, many fights were already lost before the first bell rang. Tyson's rise coincided with a perfect storm, a public hungry for dominance, a heavyweight division longing for a new king, and a fighter whose aura alone could shatter confidence. In 1986, at just 20 years old, Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in history, knocking out Trevor Berbick in devastating fashion, a moment that symbolized the arrival of a new era where intimidation was as powerful as physical strength. Tyson unified the heavyweight titles soon after, defeating elite fighters with ruthless efficiency, and what made his reign so frightening was not just his punching power but the sense of inevitability. Once Tyson pressed forward, there was no escape. Opponents spoke of the fear in his eyes, the silence before the storm, the way his presence seemed to shrink the ring itself, and fans watched in awe as heavyweight champions fell like beginners. Tyson's fights became global events not because of suspense but because of anticipation. How fast would it end? How brutal would it be? And who, if anyone, could survive the storm? Under C.U. D'Amato's guidance, Tyson was disciplined, focused, and mentally sharp, but when C.U. passed away in 1985, cracks began to form beneath the surface, even as Tyson's dominance continued. Without C.U. as his anchor, Tyson was left vulnerable to excess, manipulation, and inner demons that had always lurked in the shadows. Fame, money, and constant attention arrived faster than maturity could handle, and while Tyson continued winning, the discipline that once defined him slowly eroded. The shocking loss to Buster Douglas in 1990 was not just a sporting upset, it was a symbolic collapse of invincibility, a moment where fear returned, not as a weapon but as an unaddressed weakness, and the world watched in disbelief as the seemingly unstoppable force was defeated. That loss marked the beginning of a turbulent chapter filled with legal troubles, controversy, personal struggles, and inconsistent performances, yet even during these darker times, Tyson remained one of the most compelling figures in sports history. His comeback fights still drew massive audiences, his knockouts still electrified crowds, and his name alone carried unmatched weight. The infamous bite fight against Evander Holyfield became one of the most shocking moments in sports, further cementing Tyson's legacy as both a destructive force and a tragic figure, a man battling not only opponents but his own psyche. Despite the chaos, Tyson's influence on boxing culture remained undeniable. He redefined what intimidation meant in the ring, inspired generations of fighters to adopt aggressive, pressure-heavy styles, and brought boxing into mainstream pop culture like few before him. Mike Tyson was more than a champion, he was an experience, a spectacle where raw power collided with deep-rooted fear, creating moments that transcended sport. Today, Tyson's legacy is viewed with complexity, admiration for his unmatched dominance, empathy for his struggles, and fascination with the psychological depth of his rise and fall. His story serves as both inspiration and warning, a reminder that greatness forged from fear must be balanced with control, guidance, and self-awareness. When power meets fear, it can create legends, but without direction, it can also consume them, and no story illustrates this truth more vividly than the rise of Mike Tyson, a fighter who once ruled the world with his fists and his presence, and whose name will forever echo through the history of boxing as a symbol of raw, terrifying brilliance. Boxing glove collision.